Hello, and welcome to episode 86 of Expertise is Overrated, the podcast that takes the time to answer the questions you didn't know you didn't want the answers to. I'm Vib.
And I'm Sean, and neither of us has any clue what we're talking about.
Which I think means we get to decide what shows get funded next year for Disney+. That's a new power I didn't know we had.
I know, it's a nice one, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm funding Andor season 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10.
Except that Andor has been cancelled.
Well, no, it's not been cancelled.
Well, yeah, because it's over.
It finished.
Yeah, it finished.
It literally runs straight into Rogue One.
But this is an interesting point that I think it's still recorded as a cancellation, even though it's finished, because America just works in strange ways.
I think so. Even though you literally couldn't do any more Andor.
Well, spoilers.
Sorry. Well, but I suppose you could do a post Rogue One Andor.
Yeah. Spoilers for Rogue One, but yes. Cassian Andor in the afterlife.
Yes, Cassian Andor as a Force ghost. I like that.
Oh, that would actually be great. I'd rate that so much.
Liam Neeson's just sitting in the corner like, how are you doing this?
Yeah. Who are you, A? And B, how are you doing this? How did you do it so quickly?
That'd be excellent.
But no, so we're talking cancellations of primarily, I guess, TV shows. Possibly maybe some video games, but video games are a bit different, I guess.
I feel like there are some films that nearly get made and then get cancelled, but a lot of the time I think that's because of Hollywood accounting.
Hollywood accounting. We should have a discussion about Hollywood accounting, because I think you were making some interesting points the other day.
I don't think I know enough about it other than that it's a dark art that only 6 people in the world understand.
You not knowing enough about anything hasn't stopped you before.
Never stopped
We're on
before,
86 episodes of this crap by now, you know.
That's very true. So no, this came about because it was recently announced. Well, Wheel of Time season 3 finished.
Yes, and you were raving about it.
I was raving about it, and I will continue to rave about it because I think it was very good. As far as I can tell, did most people who watched Wheel of Time season 3. But there was no announcement that it was getting renewed for a 4th and hopefully 5th season. And then about a week ago, I think, it was announced that actually Amazon have not renewed Wheel of Time. So it is de facto cancelled.
Yep, Wheel of Time is over.
Despite having had its best season in terms of reviews or ratings. I think we need to draw a distinction between things that have been well received and things that have been watched by a lot of people, I think. So
that's absolutely right. Yeah, I think that's a key element of this discussion. But convince me, because I have not seen any of Wheel of Time after season 1. I actually also thought it was cancelled after season 1, not going to lie.
I think the problem is I'm going to really struggle to convince you to watch season 2.
That's a problem.
Season 2 was relatively not great. That's probably putting it mildly. For a whole variety of reasons. Mostly related to deviating a long way off the books, I think, for no really good reason. And then...
Well, I'm still making my way through those anyway, so...
Yeah. But then season 3 was fantastic. Season 3 tacked back towards the books very hard. Some of the sort of tentpole scenes from the books were translated to the screen very well. And as I say, if you look at its IMDb ratings for each of the episodes, they're sitting at an average of about 8.6, 8.7 for the season, which is really high. The challenge, though, seems to be that no one was watching it. The people who did watch it loved it, but not enough people were watching it, unfortunately.
Which is in and of itself kind of crazy, right? Because I've got the figures here. So season 1 I had 1.1 billion minutes viewed in its first week, which is a weird way of portraying this, but it seems to be how these stats are always shown.
That's really weird.
And it dropped off by over 50%, and only 500 million hours per week or minutes per week were watched the week after. And 500 million seems to be what it sustained for seasons 2 and 3, and then it actually went down to 420 million.
I don't know how to parse that information.
Well, to put it in context, so Chaos, which is another show that people were big about on Netflix, right? Everyone's up in arms about that being cancelled. Had a very similar turnout, like 900 and something million in the first week, and then also dropped to about 500 million, and they cancelled it then and there, you know?
Oh, wow. So, what's obviously, I guess, it seems like to be renewed, I guess you have to sustain your watch numbers or you have to grow them.
I think it's about growth, right? And this is an interesting point, because TV is obviously not the same as it was 10, 20 years ago, right?
No.
Where you had slots on a schedule. You know, you had prime time TV, so your best shows had to go there because it brought most people out. These streaming services, I think, are all about what is going to get us a new and sustained customer, right? What is going to bring this Netflix viewer over to Prime?
That makes sense. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to step away. I think there's someone at the door.
Oh, no way.
A problem of recording during the middle of the day. I'll be right back. I'm so sorry about that. That's unprofessional even by my standards.
Yeah.
Just about.
Just about. But so bad numbers, not getting enough customers over, and I guess production values are not getting any cheaper, right?
No, I think I read somewhere that Andor cost something like $800 million to make, which is an insane number.
It's an insane number, and I mean, again, speaks to your Hollywood financing and accounting.
Oh yeah, no, that's got Hollywood accounting written all over it. For it to be proper Hollywood accounting, they would have had to have never released the final episode, though, because that would then enable them to write the whole show off, no matter how much, I don't know, no matter how much money it made, or something ridiculous like that.
Yeah. I mean, these are crazy numbers, right? Because I think Rings of Power is also something like $1 billion, isn't it?
Yeah, well, they paid $1 billion for the license, didn't they?
Was that just the license?
Never mind everything else. I thought that was the case. They paid $1 billion. No, that can't be right. That must be production value as well.
That for some of the worst figures a show has probably ever seen.
But I think I was going to come on to Rings of Power, but I guess we can talk about it now. How is that not getting cancelled? I guess at some point it becomes sunk costs.
Wasn't there some sort of contract that stated they had to make at least 5 seasons to acquire the license? I feel like I've heard that before.
Is that part of it? So then it's more valuable for them to make the 5 seasons than to be sued by the Tolkien estate for breach of contract.
It reminds me an awful lot of Skull and Bones, the Ubisoft pirate game, right? That should have been cancelled.
The first quadruple A game ever made. That looks rubbish.
It's bloody awful, that game. I've played the demo of it. It's just really crap. And that's just development hell combined with really stringent Singapore contracts that resulted in something being released that should have just never seen the light of day.
That's really funny. So, I guess your point around the need for numbers to grow rather than just be stagnant is, I think, probably the right one. So if we think about exactly as you said, the structure of how TV gets made now, it's all made by these streaming services who are working on monthly, for the most part, subscription numbers. And it's so easy to chop and change between them, right? You'll wait for the entirety of Shadow and Bone or whatever it is, the next season to be be released, get 1 month of Netflix, and binge the whole thing for a tenner.
Yeah.
Or however much a Netflix subscription costs now.
And having recently cancelled my Now TV subscription, for example, they will give you some aggressively good deals when you try to cancel.
Oh, yeah.
They're like, oh, but what about for £2 a month?
Yeah, what if we gave you it for free for a
exactly,
year?
Yeah.
How does that sound?
And I was like, nah, I'm good, thanks.
I'm going to have to get Now TV for the cricket over the summer again, and that's always eye-watering.
Yeah, I'll get it again, because I still need to actually watch Last of Us and so on and so forth, but...
But you save it, you save up, you save all this TV up in a way that we never used to. You used to have to structure your evening around whatever show you wanted to watch, and then you had to wait a week for it to come back. And I guess, I don't know, does that make people more invested in things?
I don't know if it's more invested. That's a good question. I don't know.
I'm trying to work out how things are different. So, if you have access to, let's say you have an Amazon Prime subscription, which means that you can watch Wheel of Time and Rings of Power and The Boys and Gen V and whatever else.
Yeah.
You almost not that incentivized to watch the latest episode of Wheel of Time when it comes out, or even in the first week, because it'll still be there in a month's time. Which I guess means that those headline number of minutes watched figures don't need, like, you've got to work really hard to make them compelling, I guess. Which is why things get... I know what you're getting at. The structuring that's really weird.
Yeah, because like, sure, let's say Chaos only got 500 million views in the second week, but perhaps it got 1 billion 3 months later, right? When people finally got round to it. I'm like, oh, actually, I should maybe cancel my Prime and go back to Netflix, because there's now a whole bunch of shows on here that I want to watch. And I don't know those numbers, but it's probably not palatable to the streaming provider, because they're like, well, we launched a new show, we kind of want people to watch it now, especially because I suspect they will have to start planning for the next season and starting to film and budget for it. So if the budget coming in, as in the revenue coming in, is bad, why bother?
Well, that's exactly right, isn't it? If you can't pretty directly tie your revenue to your show, you're just vaguely extrapolating that maybe 3% of your Prime Video revenue for last month is attributable to Wheel of Time. But you've got no way of actually measuring that, because your purchasing decisions are so displaced from what people watch when it's like a Prime Video thing.
Yeah. Wheel of Time is such a weird one, though, isn't it? Because I swear there was loads of time between seasons 1 and 2.
There was a lot of time between season 1 and 2. There wasn't as much time between seasons 2 and 3. I think probably because of a writer's strike.
The writer's strike sort of sat in between 1 and 2, didn't it?
But it's got, obviously, Rosamund Pike as its sort of frontline actor. The cast were all seemed very into it. And it did feel like it had sort of turned a corner in quality when I was watching season 3.
See, but that's one of those things I wonder about. It's like, is it... Because it feels more and more commonplace now to have actual actors be in a show and be headliners in a show. Like, Rosamund Pike won't come cheap, I wouldn't have thought. Much like I'm sure Jeff Goldblum would have been cheap for something like Chaos, right?
Yeah.
And does that contribute to these sort of things, I wonder?
Well, I suppose there was a rumour that the initial actor contracts were for 3 seasons, and so part of the reason why it wasn't immediately renewed was that they were in contract negotiations with the actors to do another 2 or 3 seasons. And it's entirely possible that those contract negotiations are an accounting practice, right? Or not an accounting practice, an accounting judgment right? So you've got to get Rosamund Pike for less than, I don't know, $50 million a season to make her contribution economically positive to the show. And if she's saying she won't do it for less than 60 because she thinks the show has the potential to make all that extra money,
yeah.
well, then you can't renew the show because you're not going to make money off it.
Yeah, it's very true. I was just feeling like so much of it must also come down to just fatigue. I certainly have that problem. You know, you can scroll through something like Netflix for ages and ages before actually figuring out something you want to watch. Even if you sort of beforehand know, I might be interested in Wheel of Time, but then there's also 17 other shows that I really kind of want to watch.
I think that's a huge problem. I have just finished because I watch TV in the evenings, like while I'm cooking or cleaning up after the kids or whatever, like once they've gone to bed. And so I've always just got a random show on in the background. So I've just finished Gen V. There's sort of The Boys spin-off on Prime. And I'm almost actively dreading trying to work out what to watch next.
Yeah.
Because it's going to take me... there's just too much choice. It would be much easier, in a sense, if I was just sticking whatever was on Channel 3 or Channel 4 on in the background, and I'll just watch whatever that is. But almost there's a lot of research been done on choice architecture and the problem of giving people too much choice, making it harder to make a decision.
Yeah. No, I mean it's undeniable, right? I think people talk about that all the time. In fact, you can spend hours flicking through Netflix and actually not watch anything.
Yeah, you spend more time deciding what you're going to watch than watching it.
Yeah. And especially now because it's so easy to say, well, why should I watch a show and then binge 7 episodes if I could just watch a film, you know, as an alternative.
That's also
as well.
true. That's also true.
So let's go back to the original question, I guess. So especially now that Wheel of Time has been cancelled, should I watch seasons 2 and 3?
I don't think I can in good conscience tell you to.
Interesting, okay.
Because...
Not where I thought you'd go.
So season 2... The problem is that the end of season 3 is quite obviously not an end.
Right.
It's a season finale, but it's quite clearly not the end of the show in the way that the ends of seasons 1 and 2 potentially could be. I think season 3 is very good. I think people who watch season 3 will enjoy it. But I am at that point giving you a recommendation to watch something that has not finished and will not finish. And so you have to go into that with your eyes open and how comfortable you're going to be with not getting the resolution to these story arcs that are being set up.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because if it's genuinely compelling television, like well acted, it's an interesting story, etc., is it still worth it? Probably.
Well, I think that's entirely possible that it could be.
Yeah. As in, if we never got Serenity, would you still watch Firefly?
I mean, 100%.
Exactly, right?
Yeah, I mean, even with Serenity, I think there's still a lot that you could tell in the Firefly universe.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I think we should still get all of them back, you know?
Oh, yeah. Bring back Serenity. Bring back Firefly, no question.
I mean, that must have got absolutely shocking numbers back in the day.
So this is the other problem, right? You've got these shows now. Firefly is a good example. Community is another one. Shows that are incredibly popular now, but just weren't. And also, I say incredibly popular. I don't know how popular something like Firefly actually is. It has a very, very loyal, rabidly loyal following, but I don't know how many people that actually is, if you like.
I wonder that as well, right? Because it's often said, oh, it's a cult classic.
But I kind of feel like that means it's a small number.
It does, right? Because you can make the argument say, oh, it's probably on the Sci-Fi Channel or it's something like that, right? It's obviously targeting a very specific audience in the first place. But even in that context, you do wonder, well, was Firefly just that much worse than Battlestar Galactica or something like that, in terms of its viewership?
No, I know. And I mean, I would definitely go into bat for Firefly being better than Battlestar Galactica, for example.
Yes, but maybe that's just because we like the very overt swashbuckling style of all the characters.
Give me more spaghetti westerns in space.
That's it, right? Like maybe the world wasn't just ready for, or just wasn't ready for that kind of genre. I don't know.
Perhaps. I don't know. I find these decisions really interesting because you can't tell me that the money that Amazon is choosing to not spend on Wheel of Time Season 4, it's going to put into a different TV show that it knows is going to make more money. That's not how this works. So I'm like, if we accept, as I think it sort of almost uniformly is accepted, that Season 3 was the best of the 3 seasons, logic would dictate that your viewership numbers are going to go up. Because if we accept that quality drives viewership, which I suppose is another question.
Yeah, we'll put a pin in that for now. I think the issue is that, sure, if Season 3 is really good, but Season 1 isn't, and people are saying Season 1 isn't good, that's a heck of a sell, right?
You've got to watch 18 episodes before it gets
good.
Exactly.
It's one of those problematic things. We talked about this with the Dresden Files, for example, as a book series.
Yes.
Like trying to turn people onto that, and you're like, well, the first 3 books are a bit shit. But it does get better, promise.
Yeah. No, I mean we've had that conversation with friend of the show Nitsua, who I think regularly says he does not recommend people start the Dresden Files at Stormfront.
Yeah,
and he actually suggests that they should start at, is it Summer Night?
Summer Night, I
think it's one
or a
one
Mask.
Later than.
Oh,
no, so
sorry.
It's whichever one. I think it's Summer Night because it's the one after.
Yeah.
It's the 4th one he recommends people start on, not the 3rd, which is the usual. Anyway, I can understand that. I don't agree with him, but I can understand
I can understand that. And actually, I would almost say that they're still very problematic until quite a lot later in the series for many reasons. But that's a whole different debate.
That's a different debate.
But I think, if quality drives viewership, and I bet it does, right? I think if Season 1 is quality and it's something that actually lands with a lot of people, like, it'll be successful, no?
I think it has to be at least correlative.
Yeah.
Right? It might not be wholly determinative, but better shows get more people watching them. Cannot be that contentious.
Like, think of the classics, right? Friends, a situational comedy, 20 minutes an episode.
Yeah.
Had a slight spin on the formula, perhaps. Did something a bit marginally different. Hugely popular,
Yes,
it's
not something ridiculous like 100 seasons or whatever.
Yeah, it's not like particularly 10, out there. And this is something I wonder.
No.
One thing I was thinking about is, like, has Game of Thrones effectively ruined a lot of television? Because we've
I fundamentally believe it has.
Because we've now reached a stage, and I guess Prime is a prime example of that. That they're now doing things like Wheel of Time and Rings of Power, which is all stuff that's adapted from source material. And is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Right, if you think of some of the famously best TV programs, quote unquote, that have been made, you're looking at things like The Wire, or The Sopranos.
The Wire or The Sopranos? Those are interesting choices.
But the point that I was going to make was I don't believe either of those are... The Sopranos might be, but I mean, The Wire certainly isn't an adaptation.
Yeah, and The Wire also had, I think, pretty shocking viewership. So...
No, it's true. I mean, I don't know what its viewership was like, but it also started its worst season is its last season.
Yeah, I think The Wire is one of those that
got-
has a cult following, which, as we've just said, is a potentially dangerous term.
Potentially, I mean, it might do.
I think the bottom line is people want to watch sitcoms, right? That's kind of it.
I mean, you've got How I Met Your Mother, The Big Bang Theory. These are not highbrow television, but they have huge viewership numbers. Family Guy,
Simpsons, obviously.
The Simpsons.
That's probably still going. Must be on 40-something seasons now, whatever.
Yeah.
But I think this whole adaptation thing, and it's not just TV where we're seeing it, right? It's the lack of creativity in the film, TV industry, and gaming industry in general.
It's true, yeah.
And I don't know where I come down on it, right? I think the idea to me of saying, "Oh yeah, I'll watch a sort of Lord of the Rings based TV show" was great, right? We've talked about that before. But then you leave yourself open to potentially greater disappointment than if it's an original idea that you hadn't thought about before.
But if we take Rings of Power as an example, and I think it's fair to say you and I are on the positively inclined towards end of the spectrum as it relates to Rings of Power, although not that far along it. If Rings of Power were not Lord of the Rings, I don't know that I would be planning to watch a season 3.
Yes, this is true.
I think it's getting, its label is giving it plaudits that it hasn't earned, essentially.
But at the same time, you're not achieving what I suspect you want to achieve when you adapt something like that, right? As in, so Game of Thrones, based on A Song of Ice and Fire, they were like, well, let's make 8 seasons, right? That's sort of what they said, because that'll be enough to cover what we need to cover. Rings of Power, same sort of thing. Like let's make 5 seasons because that's what we need to cover what we need to cover.
Yeah.
Wheel of Time would have had the same sort of thing, right? As in, we'll probably need X number of seasons to get through what we want to get through, and yet they haven't got through it.
And I think that's the problem. It means if you write with 5 seasons in mind, say, for Wheel of Time, which I think is probably what they were aiming at, 5 or 6.
For 27 books or however many it is.
Yeah, of the 14 books into 6 seasons seems quite hard. But you're going to end up in a situation where if you get cancelled after 3 seasons, as I was saying, you've just not finished the story. Yeah. Circling back, you mentioned Game of Thrones a few times. I don't understand. You've got it written here in our show notes, but I don't understand how Game of Thrones actually got its 8th season.
It can only be viewership, right? So this has to be the thing that you're saying. Does quality drive viewership? And obviously viewership drives profit. And profit drives the whole thing, right?
Profit makes the world go round.
Profit makes the world go round, exactly.
Unfortunately.
And I think they must have just thought, well, even if season 8 of Game of Thrones is a pile of garbage, people are still going to watch it, right? Even if the first 5 episodes of season 8 are hot garbage, people are still going to finish it, right?
Yeah, you've got a bit of a sunk cost viewership there as well. You know, you've got people who are watching season 8 because they've watched seasons 1 to 7.
Exactly, yeah.
Even if they're not really enjoying themselves, as people hate watching it.
There's ways to cut costs in that one, you know, like just make the battle for Winterfell so dark that you can't see anything, so you don't actually need to hire any actors. It's great.
You're never going to let that one
I'm
go,
really not. I've never been so disappointed with an episode of TV in my life.
Did you not just turn the brightness up on your TV?
But why?
So I've seen the most interesting thing about that I've read is that it was to do with how many people were streaming it versus watching it on cable. And apparently, if you watch it on cable, it's really visible because of like you don't have bitrate compression or whatever it is. So the blacks are you can make out more detail because it's not getting pixelated through the streaming.
That's really interesting.
It's not exactly that, but it's like it wasn't shot for streaming; it was shot for cable.
Yeah.
And so the experience is different depending on whether you're watching it.
I mean, it'd still be a shit episode of
your
TV,
platform.
even if you could see what was going on.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't think the people who were able to see everything that was going on had it better, if I'm honest. But I just think that's quite interesting. The people who couldn't see anything almost uniformly were watching it on either on iPads or streaming it to their TV or whatever.
Game of Thrones is an interesting one, right? Because I think when we got season 7, we were never not going to get season 8. But I was kind of surprised we got seasons 6, 7, and 8 because it was already kind of jumping the shark at that point.
Well, you had the Red Wedding was season 4,
3. I want to say, was it not?
I don't remember.
Yeah, hang on.
So I can't remember when Game of Thrones really started to get shit.
The Reigns of Castamere. Oh, that takes me back to good TV, you know? Season 3, episode 9, yeah.
Okay.
Because then we had the Purple Wedding.
I think the fact that was the end of season 3, and then we got another
good season out of Game of Thrones, and then we essentially reached the point where Martin hadn't written it.
Of it.
You know?
Yes, there was that problem.
But it makes a ton of money, I'm sure. Well, enough to
it makes a ton of
created
money.
a spin-off. Well, not a spin-off, I guess, but using other source material from the same universe to make another TV show that is also seemingly quite successful.
But not being as well received.
Not being as well received because it's that kind of thing, right? What Game of Thrones achieved in seasons 1 through 3 was unlike anything I'd ever experienced in TV.
No, and I think that's very true.
It was different, and it's fundamentally a fantasy show that somehow became hugely popular.
It became mainstream.
Yeah.
That's it pulled fantasy into the mainstream.
And then House of the Dragon, because it's 2.0, right? You're not gonna get the same kind of result from that, I don't think.
No, that's very true. That's very, very true. I'm finding the whole thing very interesting because I'm coming to the conclusion slowly that there actually isn't going to be a coherent answer that explains every show, because every show is going to have its own unique push and pull that's going to dictate whether or not it gets renewed or gets cancelled. So you take something like House of Cards, for example. They didn't cancel House of Cards after it turned out that Kevin Spacey was a sex pest.
Yeah.
They just pivoted.
They pivoted, yes.
So, and I think it's finished now, I think. But they managed to eke out a few more seasons of that, even though the headline actor they could no longer use or chose no longer to use.
But maybe we're just overcomplicating it in that case, right? Because I don't necessarily have the numbers to hand, but Wheel of Time production value will be very high, right? Rings of Power, we know, is very high. Yeah. Friends, as another extreme example, it's literally a couple of cameras, some sets, and 6 actors on screen, and that's it. That's all you're paying.
Same with How I Met Your Mother, same with Big Bang Theory, same with Scrubs.
Yeah, and even...
Same House, even. All right, it's got more sets.
But... Yeah, but it's something quite low, right? When you have things such as The Boys, or even Firefly, you know, all that kind of stuff adds up, right?
Yeah.
And maybe that must just be the bottom line, right? As in, this show is too expensive for the amount of money it is making us, therefore it's over. You know?
Yeah, I think that is the very simplistic way of putting it. These are all economic questions at the end of the day, because these shows are all made by companies seeking to turn a profit.
Yeah.
And they will be very effective at projecting the return on every dollar that they spend, based on historic viewership and what have you.
And it's also why you don't get the inverse of that, right? Again, with Game of Thrones, like, they're not going to look at the script and go, well, this is fucking shite, we're not going to make this, because they'll just see, like, well, actually, it's going to make us a ton of money regardless.
Yeah, we could literally not have any dialogue in an episode and it would still make us loads of money, because everyone's watching Game of Thrones now. That's true.
Which is why Rings of Power, I think, is such an interesting scenario, because nobody likes it, nobody wants to watch it, and it seems they're still going through with it. It's not well written either. You know, it's sort of, why is it being made, and why is it not being cancelled? It's just beggars belief at this point, really.
So, according to Forbes, how many people watch Rings of Power?
Not many.
Not many.
Not many whatsoever.
So Rings of Power season 1 had 8. This is such a confusing metric. 8 billion minutes watched.
Yeah.
Rings of Power, which puts it nearly 4 times as high as Loki season 2 or Secret Invasion. Rings of Power season 2 had maybe 2.5 billion. The graph isn't clear, but 60% decrease in total minutes watched from the show's first season.
Yeah, and even what was that first? A billion? No, more.
Rings of Power season 1, 8 billion.
So that's 1 billion viewing minutes per episode.
Yeah.
Which, given that they're all about an hour long, let's say. Oh, we're doing actual maths on the show. This is crazy.
We don't do that here.
So that's, by my calculations, about 16 to 17 million people watching an episode.
That's really
That's
low.
Quite a low number, isn't it?
To say that it's available
worldwide,
globally,
at your own leisure.
Yes.
It's given that Friends in season 1 had apparently 24 million viewers, so that's 1 million viewers per episode, which was on terrestrial TV, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
The comparisons, some interesting comparisons with Rings of Power season 2. You've got the Bridgerton on Netflix, 11 billion minutes.
Bridgerton, yeah.
Fallout, nearly 8 billion. And Percy Jackson and the Olympians clocked in at 3 billion. And the Acolyte was 2.7 billion. So,
much maligned, that show.
I need to watch it. I'm really interested.
Me too.
To watch it.
Talking of fatigue, though, especially with Star Wars, I definitely had some Star Wars fatigue. Not in many ways helped by the fact that we're also doing our rewatch.
Yeah, the Star Wars watch along is really check that out on Patreon. But it's really, really exhausting me on Star Wars.
We've just finished the prequels and we have thoughts. So head on over to patreon.com for that goodness. Yeah. I don't know about you. I think you hit the nail on the head when you're saying you watch TV when you're kind of doing something else. It's what I end up doing nowadays as well. There's very few shows, Andor being an interesting exception, where I will actually sit down and watch it properly. It's quite damning, really, isn't it?
It really is. There are very, very, as you say, there are very few pieces of TV that I will sit down and watch. But part of that is the availability. I really think there's something to this. The enormous availability of TV, catch-up TV, on-demand, plus films, means that I'm not incentivized to sit down and watch TV.
Yeah.
And that almost drives this sort of casual audience phenomenon of your show has to work for someone who's not paying attention. Which in a lot of ways is, there are a lot of things that are inexplicable about Andor and its success, but the fact that it actually does require your attention is definitely one of them.
Well, require your attention and hold it. That's the key thing, especially in our modern generation of, seconds worth of attention span as opposed to hours.
That and holds it is I think completely irrelevant, though. Andor demands your attention and then holds it. It requires you to pay attention, but it helps you pay attention by not letting go once it's grabbed you.
Yeah. I mean, it's just immensely compelling TV, right? For all the right reasons. Good acting.
Yeah.
Good storylines. It's an interesting universe. It's just got everything you want.
At its most fundamental level, it's just really good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think a lot, we're talking about season 3 of Wheel of Time, or seasons 1 and 2 of Rings of Power, or even we've got other examples here. The latest 8 seasons of Heroes. All right, they might have been cancelled because they had dropping viewership or whatever, but fundamentally they just weren't very good. And we're almost scrabbling around to find, why has Wheel of Time been cancelled? Well, because seasons 1 and 2 weren't very good.
Yeah, Heroes is an interesting one to mention there, right? Because season 1 of Heroes was phenomenal, I thought.
Was very good. But they probably should have stopped there.
Yeah, because season 2 already was just... I think they were sort of surprised. Like, oh, wow, this did so well that we actually have to make more of this stuff.
Yes, I think that's exactly
and the writing absolutely fell off a cliff. So... It's why I'm so frustrated about the fact that when people have source material and they know kind of how long they want to go for and how to get there, why are they doing such a bad job of it at times?
I don't know. It's a very simple question with no simple answer. But I don't know why. Well, Wheel of Time, as with all of these things, provides us with a very good example. You look at season 1 of Wheel of Time, you compare it to the first book, The Eye of the World, and so much of season 1, you just go, but why did you change that? Why I don't understand I understand making concessions for the media through which you're telling your story. That's absolutely fine. Visual media versus written sort of print media, they have different requirements, but you can put that bit of writing on the screen. It's fine. Just lift and shift the dialogue. Like, I don't understand what you're trying to do here.
So did they stick to their guns then in seasons 2 and 3 and justify the decision making?
So season 2 they did. Season 2 deviates even further and is just a wild time. Season 3 was not quite a word for word lift and shift from the books, but it was pretty much beat for beat.
That is really interesting.
The books.
I do just wonder if they wanted to hit mainstream audiences with this, and for some reason decided that they knew better than Robert Jordan.
International best-selling author Robert Jordan.
And Brandon Sanderson.
Who has apparently come out. I haven't seen the interview, but apparently Brandon Sanderson has come out since the announcement that Wheel of Time was being cancelled to say that he's relieved it's being cancelled because he no longer has to put his name to it. Because he was apparently like an executive producer or an executive consultant or something to the show, which he has come out and said means that he was not asked for his input but required to give his approval. Yeah, basically, and he did because that was what he was contractually obliged to do. but he's glad he no longer has to do that.
Yeah, I can imagine he's got plenty of other things to do, such as cutting out entire novels from his novels. But
he needs a new editor so badly.
No, that's interesting. I think, I mean, I can't wait for the Harry Potter TV show to just make it for 2 seasons and get cancelled after all the hype.
I'm going to be so... yeah. I'm excited for the Harry Potter TV show. I've seen a lot of people talking about it in a variety of ways. I think people are trying very hard to work out whether or not they can separate it from J.K. Rowling and their dislike or otherwise of her. No. But I'm just very curious to see what they do with it as a TV show. And as with most of these things, it will probably be not as good as we hope it is. But I'm hopeful that it's good enough.
Yeah. There's only one play, I think, for the Harry Potter TV show, which is make it as book accurate as you can be. Right? Ride the fact that films were actually kind of terrible because they changed a lot.
I think that's absolutely right. Stick as closely as possible to
because you have the time in the TV show. Just do that.
Have an entire episode dedicated to a game of Quidditch. Like, that's absolutely fine. Do that. That would be great.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to have to hook people in the first couple of episodes, though, right? Where there isn't a whole lot of magic.
Does it, though?
Well, maybe not. Maybe not.
Because it's Harry Potter.
Yeah, because it's Harry Potter.
So it might not need to.
It probably does, right? Because, I mean, it's Lord of the Rings, didn't carry Rings of Power.
But the Rings of Power is getting another season, though.
Yeah, but it's still not going to get watched, is it?
No, maybe not.
You know, just because you're making content and putting it out in the world doesn't mean it's worth a damn.
That's true. That's true. I think it would be very, very sad if we got a season or 2 seasons of the HBO Harry Potter and then that got cancelled. I think that'd be really a real shame.
It would be, for sure.
But I've not seen it, so if it's rubbish, don't make any more of it. But don't make it rubbish.
Don't make it rubbish. That is the bottom line of all of this. Don't make it rubbish.
I'm available if people need me to consult.
Oh, good.
I'm full of advice like that.
That's what people have been waiting for. Yes. So then, I guess it's a random question to perhaps end on. Of all the cancelled shows, and by this I mean prematurely cancelled and not just ran their course. Of all the cancelled shows that you've watched, what's the one that you would like to come back?
I mean, the correct answer is
of course, Firefly, yes.
But I think a case could be made for Community as well.
Okay.
The issue with Community is that it got cancelled and then brought back several times. Which really didn't help it. Although I think they're now making a Community film.
Oh, really? Okay, that's interesting.
I think I saw. I mean, the correct answer is Firefly. Though, I mean, I want more Firefly. I would be perfectly happy with them retconning Serenity out of existence if I was getting more Firefly.
Ooh, I don't know. I quite like Serenity.
I liked Serenity.
But I do want Alan Tudyk to come back. So
I want Alan Tudyk to come back. I mean, Ron Glass sadly has passed away because I'd like him to come back.
That is a problem, yeah.
So that is going to be a problem.
Let's just get Jimmy Smits involved instead. Do you not think? I think that would be a great replacement. I don't know why that came all of a sudden into my head, but
Shepherd Buck. I mean, you're not wrong.
I just want more Jimmy Smits in my life. What can I say?
The fact that Jimmy Smits isn't in Andor is an absolute travesty.
When you told me this, I actually haven't gone back to to Andor for a bit.
He's in The West Wing. If you need more Jimmy Smits in your life, watch the later seasons of The West Wing.
Yeah, West Wing.
West
Wing is definitely on my my list of things to watch at some point in my life.
There's a lot of it, and it's all very good. But it does have Jimmy Smits as a Texan Hispanic Obama, which is excellent.
Love that. Yeah, no, I mean that's interesting because I wondered if you would say Wheel of Time because you enjoyed season 3 so much. But Firefly is there, right? So it's
yeah, Firefly is there. I was thinking Wheel of Time, and for its currence or currentness, I think there's a strong argument that finding somewhere to do Wheel of Time, giving it a home now, is the right time to do it because we know we'll get a good Wheel of Time TV show. I don't think it'll happen.
It won't happen. Not for a really long time.
Not for another 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I agree. It has to be Firefly. I'm bitter about Heroes, that's why I wrote it on our little list, but I don't want it to come back because the writing was so poor by the end. So
yeah, I sort of think I'd like them to just do Heroes again. Like start with a new season 1 of Heroes.
It'd be very difficult to do that though, because yeah, it depends on where you take that. In my mind, because The Boys exists, it's hard to do something like Heroes. I don't really know if that makes sense. I don't really know if it makes sense in my own head.
Heroes kind of filled a similar space to The Boys, didn't it?
Like the Boys is definitely darker, and we were talking about maybe doing an episode on The Boys as a concept and why I've not gone back after season 1. But
yeah, that would be interesting. Because we're going to get a new season fairly soon, I think. I've just finished Gen V. There's a 1950s Friedrich Vaught spin-off apparently in the works, which I'm very keen for. But it's interesting that you've not gone back because I thought you'd really enjoyed it.
I did, I think. But and this is the curse of modern streaming, is that I binged a lot of it, and I think it just injured my soul.
Yeah, no, I mean I've watched all of the Boys and obviously, as I say, Gen V, and I feel stained.
Yeah, you have to really dilute that kind of content. I had the same problem when I originally watched The Office, the real Office, the Ricky Gervais Office, because again I binge watched the entire season of that in one go, and again felt like part of me had been lost,
just tarnished slightly.
Because I mean, it's a great TV show, fantastic TV show, and gave rise to one of the other greatest TV show spin-offs ever. And The Boys, again, it was a very compelling season of TV. But fucking hell, it's dark.
To be fair though, there's a good argument that season 1 of The Boys is the best season. The rest of it's still very good, but I think season 1 might be the best.
Well, it's the thing with long-term content anyway, right? Is that opinions will start to diverge, and you think, oh, I actually care more about this storyline than that. But
that's right.
Yeah, I can imagine it's still just very compelling. But yeah, cancellations, a bitch.
It is a bit. It's difficult because you get emotionally invested in the story. I was emotionally invested in the characters in Wheel of Time, and I'm now not going to get any payoff to that investment at all. And there is a bit of me that feels quite grumpy that I've wasted over many hours of my life half watching it when I could have been half watching something else instead that would have given me that emotional payoff.
Exactly. Yeah, that's absolutely right. But guess what isn't being cancelled anytime soon?
Us.
Well, We're not cancelling ourselves. It's entirely possible that somebody else cancels us, but that's fair enough.
What was your serious?
No, I was going to say us. Yeah, no.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I stole your thunder.
No, that's fine. That is allowed.
On that, what I assume was no doubt greatly disappointing news to all of our fans that we're actually not planning on going anywhere. I think all that's left is to say thank you for listening to this episode of Expertise is Overrated. No doubt we said some things that were either objectively wrong or downright offensive. As ever, feel free to let us know, rate the podcast wherever you can, check out our Patreon for bonus content, and come chat to us on Discord.
If you're lucky, we might just argue with you in one of our upcoming episodes. And if you're really lucky, we might call you an idiot. Come back next time for some more absolute nonsense.